Hello Animorphs fans and welcome back to the Animorphs universe. We're doing another AniLysis, as I'm hoping to do weekly from now on because there's so many to go through. Come on then Lila, if you're coming up, or just lick yourself, whatever. We're looking at Miss Paloma today. Now Miss Paloma was a teacher at the Animorphs school, and we're only ever officially introduced to her in Book 7, The Stranger, and this is the first moment we have her mentioned, and it also explains why I've got this peculiar image of a cat in front of a skeleton. What? You scared of the skeleton on the desk? Well, that's Miss Paloma, and we're about to figure out why I've chosen that picture of her. Let's read the quote from Book 7, The Stranger. So we walked across the scruffy field, beneath a sky that seemed to add yellow to blue and make patches and wisps of green, unlike any sky I had ever seen. We passed the school, and I looked morbidly through the blast holes to see if we could recognise anything. "Yeah!" Marco yelled. He reeled back from one of the dark holes. I ran to look inside. It was a classroom. There was a skeleton lying crumpled across the teacher's desk. "Oh my God," Cassie whispered. "The body was just left here." "That's Paloma's classroom," I said. "History class." It took a few seconds for the significance of that to sink in. The body had been left there to rot. It must have taken years for it to be reduced to nothing but bones. "Cassie's right. We're in the future," Marco said. "But that's impossible." "Impossible for humans," Axe said, "but not impossible for Ellimists." So, Miss Paloma, we're first introduced to her in a future that hasn't quite happened yet. But in that future that hasn't quite happened yet, she looks like that picture there. She's a skeleton crumpled over a desk. Now, of course, there wouldn't be... Oh, actually, no, it is the future, so there might well be a laptop there. But, of course, the Animorphs would have been like, what's that weird computer that looks like a flip phone from the... What do you want? What are you after, Lila? Freaking cats. Look, you're going to get all tangled in my lanyard microphone cables. Come on, get off, you bugger. You are getting tangled. What is wrong with you? Why can't you be more like Tiggles and just, like, absent from my life, like, until I need him? What... At least I feel loved. The Animorphs have been put into this future, and they're wandering around thinking, God, this place looks a bit grim. Because what's happened is, and Axe mentioned, it's the Ellimist. He's put them into this future timeline that hasn't actually happened yet, but this is what might happen. I mean, it's timey-wimey stuff, so, you know, don't look too much into it, the science of it and what have you. But this isn't the actual state of Miss Paloma. This is what we first see of her. This is where she's first mentioned. And, you know, if anyone were to remember Miss Paloma, that's how they'd remember her. As a skeleton lying crumpled over a teacher's desk. She is the history teacher. So that's what we learn about her. But we do actually meet her in the same book. And Rachel, who's the narrator in this book, is in Miss Paloma's history class. Cassie's there too. So they're going through a history lesson. And this is where Rachel gets the seeds that the Ellimist is planting, and eventually she'll reach her eureka moment. But this is where one of those seeds is planted in Miss Paloma's classroom. Not necessarily by Miss Paloma herself, but more sort of indirectly. So let's look at what happens with Rachel in Miss Paloma's classroom after she has this vision of the future. I can't tell you how weird it was going to school the next day, sitting in class trying to pay attention while my teacher, Miss Paloma, talks about what led up to the Second World War. "Maybe if the United States had been ready to fight earlier," she said, "the war would have ended earlier and fewer people would have been killed, but our country wanted peace." I just kept looking at her and wondering, was that your skeleton draped across the desk? "Because we were so devoted to peace, we may have actually made the war worse," Miss Paloma droned on. "We'll never know for sure, of course. You can't really second guess history." "You can if you're an Ellimist," I thought. If you're an Ellimist, you can look ahead and see it all. Why not? It was Cassie's voice. Why can't you second guess history? I mean, if you could go back and change things so that the US was ready to fight earlier. Miss Paloma sat on the edge of her desk. Because events are intertwined in ways we cannot always see, Cassie. Sometimes small things can make huge differences. You know, they say that a single butterfly beating its wings in China may affect the way the wind blows here in our country. A single butterfly beating its wings may make a tiny change that becomes a bigger change, that becomes a tornado. The world isn't like math. It isn't just 1 + 1 = 2. It's more complicated than that. And then the oddest thing happened. Miss Paloma looked right at me, right into my eyes. Much more complicated than that, she said. A single butterfly. A single butterfly. A single butterfly. The hair on the back of my neck was tingling. Everyone was looking at her like she was crazy. Suddenly, Miss Paloma shook her head, like she was popping out of a trance. She smiled a confused smile. Okay, well, anyway, you all have the reading assignments. So Miss Paloma is talking about America joining the Second World War, and she says it's basically America wanted peace, which is debatable. The populace did. Like, the actual governments and that, it's a bit of a different story. It's mostly about the amount of stuff they had. America back then wasn't quite the massive world-dominating military force it is now. But yeah, largely the population wanted not to have anything to do with the World War. They wanted to just, you know, chill. So yeah, and she's going through this discussion, and then Cassie jumps in, basically saying, oh, how about if you could change history? And then Miss Paloma takes that as a hint to go into a metaphorical discussion about butterflies in China. Which, yeah, it is what... Me frickin' doing this... Sorry if that was a loud noise. Me doing this is unlikely to cause a civil war in Bolivia in the year 2038. But there is a small chance that that simple action did that. You know, it's... You can't predict the future. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. That's how the song goes. And that's basically... Miss Paloma might as well get up on the desk and start singing that rather than the whole cliche frickin' butterfly and cliched frickin' China doing the cliched flappy wappy. Yeah. What am I on about? But she gives that whole spiel, and then suddenly it's like she goes into a trance. Which, I mean, we all know who orchestrates this little trance thing going on. She just looks at Rachel and goes, a single butterfly. Single butterfly, Rachel. A single buggering buggerfly. Get it? And eventually they do come around to getting it after a lot of, this Ellimist chap, who's he again? Okay, tell me that wasn't weird, Cassie whispered. I thought maybe I was imagining it, I said. Besides, who knows what's weird anymore? I'm sitting there waiting for the you-know-who to suddenly zap us out of here. Cassie nodded. So why hasn't he? I don't know, I said as I spun my combination lock. We decided to say yes. We're giving him what he wants. Unless, Cassie said, unless maybe that wasn't the answer he wanted, I finished her thought. But it's nuts, Cassie said, frowning. Everything he did made it look like he wanted us to say yes. He appears the first time right as we were about to be swallowed. I mean, come on. Obviously he must have figured we'd want to bail. We might have, I said. Except we saw that drop shaft, so we thought we could escape. Otherwise... I stopped talking. I stared at Cassie. She stared back. He showed us that drop shaft, Cassie said. A single butterfly, I thought. But how is the butterfly supposed to know when to beat her wings? So they're going through this whole, oh, what does this thing that happened with Miss Paloma mean? Why did the Ellimist not come to save us? And then eventually it all comes together for Rachel in a dream in which Miss Paloma appears. He showed us that drop shaft, Cassie said again. Only now she was Miss Paloma. My eyes snapped open. I sat up in my bed. I was as awake as I'd ever been. I was electric. Ha ha! I yelled in the darkness of my room. Yes! Basically, the Ellimist got fed up of waiting and started smacking Rachel across the head. Just get it. Just understand the thing I'm trying to tell you. Christ, I'll make Cassie say the thing that I did, but she can now be Miss Paloma, so you can connect those dots. Just get it into your fucking head. Spurt, 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 spurt. That was a gag from Bottom. Rest in peace, Rick Mayall. Greatest actor ever, by the way, Rick Mayall. A lot of my mannerisms when I'm doing these videos come from him. Absolute classic. But yeah, so the Ellimist has basically got fed up of Rachel being an airhead, basically, and shoves it into her dream as blunt as he possibly can without basically saying, look, this is the Ellimist, do that, because he can't interfere. So basically, he gets Cassie to say the thing about the Ellimist, but then turns her into Miss Paloma as she's saying it, so that Rachel then connects those dots in her very, very blonde head on this particular day. Blondes aren't all stupid, by the way, just most of them. Am I cancelled yet? I reckon Miss Paloma was a blonde. We don't actually know. We don't get any details like that, so we're gonna speculate that at the end of the video. But yeah, just for the sake, just as my apology to the blondes out there, Miss Paloma is a blonde. Okay, nothing wrong with that. And she's also got the Karen cut. She's a Karen. Yeah, there we go. Let's just carry on, Adam. So we basically understand at this point that the Ellimist, who never interferes, sort of interfered slightly with Miss Paloma, you know, this sentient being, this free spirit, free will person thing, and just says, no, just for these few seconds, I'm going to take control of your body like a Yertic would, and make you act weird like that towards Rachel, so that eventually she'll understand what the frick-a-froo I'm trying to tell you. And that's how it goes. But that's basically as far as Miss Paloma's story goes. She was there to help plant the seeds of what the Ellimist was trying to get at, including in the future site, where she's lying dead on the desk, you know. She plays a role in that whole hallucination, illusion, whatever you want to call it. So she is basically an Ellimist puppet, briefly. But it's not like the Animorphs think, oh, we've got this new teacher in today, and then she never turned up again. No, she's always there, and she's the history teacher. So we can almost imply that she has an effect throughout the rest of the series as well, just from these few quotes. And you'll notice, by the way, that the only person who ever seems to mention history class after this point, / before this point, is Marco. I saw Jake the next day in school. I had just come out of history class, where I had blown a pop quiz. It was after school the same day. I'd finished the English paper exactly 9 seconds before the teacher came around to collect it. Then I'd gone to history and been assigned another paper. That's the nature of school. It never really ends. Thought for 2 seconds about the history test I was going to fail that afternoon. Wondered if Chapman was going to bring up my cutting school and failing my history tests at the next parent-teacher conference. Oh, Eric, one more thing, Marco called after him. I kind of need a makeup paper on some great figure from American history. It's kind of due the day after tomorrow. Geography isn't my best subject, Marco said. History either, for that matter. But is anyone thinking what I'm thinking? Aztec, Mayan, Inca, General South or Central American primitive style pyramid? Basically, anytime history class is brought up in the series, it's Marco saying how he's either going to struggle with a history class, how he's going to get a special assignment in it, or he's basically flunked it for whatever reason. So I get the feeling that Marco and Miss Paloma don't get along very often, because I'm also assuming that, I mean, I've never been to American school, so I don't know whether, like, the history teacher teaches history, like, throughout. I mean, in our school we had a select number of history teachers or whatever, and they would cycle through. But I'm just going to speculate that Miss Paloma is also Marco's history teacher, and he doesn't get along very well with her for whatever reason, and she keeps failing him. She's pulling him back. Damn you, teacher Karen. Karen Paloma, that's her name. Karen Paloma. She's 5'6", she's got the Karen haircut, she wears that exact tie. And she eats salad for lunch at work. I mean, who does that, honestly? Anybody who eats salad is either a rabbit or in a disguise or a complete beta. Yeah, that's it. I'm in that phase of me now. Everyone's a beta. If I ever do that unironically, then please shoot me. So that's pretty much Miss Paloma. I mean, we never really get any other descriptions of her apart from her being a skeleton at one point in a fictional setting. Apart from that, she's just the Ellimist puppet when and where he chooses, and she fails Marco a lot. That's Miss Paloma. I'm glad we got to know you before that happened. If it ever did. It obviously doesn't happen because we don't get that future scenario. So we can safely say that Miss Paloma probably doesn't meet that fate in the series. We never see her again after Book 7. And even where Marco mentions history, it's not mentioned specifically to be Miss Paloma. That's just my headcanon of she's the one doing the history class. And we don't know what happens to her after that. Maybe she leaves town when it gets blown up, or maybe she gets pulled into being one of the controllers like a lot of other people in the town towards the end. We don't know. Likelihood she probably survived after the war and carried on being a teacher elsewhere. That's my speculation. She was being a Karen elsewhere, failing all the other Marcos of the world. Okay, thank you, Miss Paloma, for your services. Nice haircut, and thank you very much for watching. The next AniLysis is going to be on Lakofa. Lakofa? Lagova. Lakfoviver. Some Ketran. I'm sure you know him. But we're going to do that next time. So join me for that one, and I shall see you next time. Ta-ra.